Good evening. Welcome to Reflections on East Granby. My name is Mike Malloy and I'll be your host this evening. Our guest tonight is Robert Perkins, a resident of East Granby since 1985. He's 64 years old. He was born in 1947 and he'll be sharing his story with us tonight. Good evening, Bob. Nice to meet you. Is it okay to call you Bob?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Well, we start out always the same with your place of birth and any background on that information that you'd like to share.
Okay.
Parents and.
Born in 1947 in Waterbury Hospital.
Okay.
Grew up in Watertown, just north of Waterbury.
All right.
Most of my winters were spent in New Hampshire skiing and my summers down on the coast, sailing boats at my uncle's house.
Oh.
But basically just a normal 50s and 60s childhood.
Okay. So you were like the beginning of the baby boom, basically.
I think I'm in the third year of it.
The post-war baby boom.
Post-war baby boom.
Yeah.
My father was in the service, came home, and
So you grew up in Watertown?
yes.
Okay. And how many years did you live there? What age?
Lived there till I was 18, went off to college.
So you went to school. What is it? I was trying to touch on what would be your earliest memory. Is there anything that
Just some very early memories of actually being home with some early childhood diseases and stuck in the back room when all the other kids were out playing, probably 4 or 5 years old.
So being ill as a child,
Yeah,
you
but
have some
it wasn't
early
really always ill, but
Right.
just my my mother's aunt came and took care of me.
Okay.
So it was sort of a different situation.
Yeah, it usually takes something unique for it to be a memory at
Right.
that age. So
Right.
now, what do you remember your early school years? What was school like in Watertown?
Walked to school, kindergarten to 6, because it was right at the top of the hill. My best friend's mother was my 4th grade teacher.
Okay.
Did standard K to 6 at Baldwin School, and then went off to 7th, 8th, and 9th at Gordon Swift, which is a junior high school in the Watertown system.
Okay.
Was a member of the, well, I got chosen to be in the advanced program because I was going off to college, everybody thought.
Okay.
Went through high school at New Waterbury High School because my father was on the, well, not because of, but my father was on the chairmanship of the building committee.
Okay.
We had a brand new school system. One of the interesting things is that Ernest Borgnine, the actor, his brother was our basketball coach.
No kidding.
So he used
Wow.
to come to a lot of the basketball games
Right.
when McHale's Navy and all of those.
Oh, Ernest
things
did?
Oh, yeah.
Were they from the area? Or was
Well, the brother was.
Oh, okay. Right.
So he lived in town.
So he used to come visit.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's never really participated in too many sports. I was into skiing and scuba diving and fencing. I was on the high school fencing team.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So did some of the strange things.
So it's a pretty active school system. You had
Yes.
a lot of
Yeah,
good
about
experience.
215 students in the graduating class.
And you graduate. Okay, so Watertown's a pretty decent sized town.
Yeah, at that time I think it was 11 or 12,000 people.
Okay. All right. So any other memories from your childhood or those years that kind of jump out?
Well, I was on the state forest fire team, so every time there's a forest fire, we got to leave school early and
Oh, really?
go
Okay.
fight forest fires, which was it was kind of fun.
Must have been a popular group to belong
Well,
to.
a farmer friend of ours, where I used to work in the summers, helping him hay and things, he was the fire warden for the area, so he got he and myself and my friend on the team. So,
Oh, great. Okay.
But it was a good experience.
Right. So when you were going to school, what did your parents do for a living? Or what
My
did-
father was a chief engineer for the Waterbury Republican American newspaper.
Okay.
And Eastern Color Printing Company. They're the people that print the Sunday comics, the Sears ads, and actually printed some of the earliest comic books.
Okay.
So we always had comic books around the house.
Oh, that's
My
kind of
father would
interesting.
bring
Yeah.
home. And my mother was a stay-at-home mom.
Right. It's kind of like having your dad work in a toy factory or something.
Yeah,
That's
it
pretty
was
good.
a lot of fun.
Yeah. So you grew up, and your mom was stay at home. And how many did you have brothers and sisters?
3 brothers.
Okay.
2 actually born before the war.
Okay.
And myself and my younger brother after the war. So it was almost 2 families.
Right,
There's
right.
7 years difference between the next older and myself.
So there was quite a gap. So it was probably a little tougher. Did your father go off to war, or was there?
He was in the Army Air Corps
Okay.
in South Pacific. He built airports.
Oh, wow.
He was a battalion commander for the Army Engineers.
Oh, interesting.
And it turned out funny because I was in the Air Force later on and
Okay.
actually visited some of the places he built.
Oh, no. It's fascinating. Okay, so you graduate from Watertown
High school.
Okay.
Went
And-
off to Northeastern University.
Okay.
I was going to be an engineer,
Yep.
follow my father. 2.5 years in, I decided I didn't like engineering.
Okay.
So I went into criminal justice for a year, decided I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, and went in the Air Force.
Okay.
I spent 4 years in the Air Force as a load master. It's the only flying job for a first-term airman.
Okay.
So the first year I spent on C-141s, which you probably see fly overhead going into Westover. They're a 4-engine jet,
Okay.
about the size of the old 707.
Okay. So the smaller
Right.
cargo
And then
for the military.
Right.
Anyway.
The last 3 years, I was on C-130s, which
Okay.
are the propeller turboprops.
Those are the big ones.
They're smaller than a 141,
Okay.
but they're more combat oriented.
Okay.
And I spent
So they fly them into active combat zones.
right.
Okay.
I was stationed in Okinawa and then Taiwan, but most of my time was spent in Vietnam.
Okay.
Spent 18 months over there.
During the active
During-
conflict.
Right. We did 97 combat missions in those months.
What years was that?
71, 72.
Oh, so you you were there right at the
Yeah, it was. There were times when it got exciting.
probably the height of the air war at that point, right?
Yeah,
Pretty close.
it got exciting some of the times.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. So you spent 4 years doing that, and then what did you do?
Then I
once you-
came back, went back to school,
Okay.
and got my bachelor's degree actually at Quinnipiac in finance. Although I never wanted to work in finance,
Okay.
I wanted to work in marketing. But you have to know the numbers in order to be in business.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And then just started a career. Started out working for a used machinery dealer in Torrington, and continued on through. Spent a number of years selling cigarette lighters around the world. Most of my career has been international.
Okay. So you got into sales and you
Sales and marketing, right.
So that was it sounds like you've run the gamut of selling different.
Right, I've been in heavy machinery, consumer products and the cigarette lighters.
Right.
Services, I was in market research and market consultant for a while.
Right.
Packaging machinery, tea bagging machines, drug packaging machines. And then I've been with Jacobs, where I'm currently employed for 26 years.
Okay.
We make the engine brake for diesel trucks.
Okay. Which is a worldwide.
That's a pretty global activity.
Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting. Sales is always one of those fields like probably a few others that you can kind of transplant your abilities into different. Once you're in a technical end, though, I guess, or mechanical, I guess that pays.
I think it's all transferable.
Right.
I also think that the two things about sales. Everybody thinks sales is a bad word,
Right.
And it really isn't. And the other is that everybody's in sales.
We're all selling something.
We're all selling something. You're selling a budget to your boss.
Right.
You're selling yourself to somebody you want to marry.
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever it is, everybody's in sales.
That's an excellent way to put it. Yeah.
So,
But I guess, yeah. No, I think that it's one of those fields that you're right. You could take that and apply it to almost any sort of technology or any sort of field. So you have you graduated. You got your first job, and where were you living at the time?
in Canton,
Okay.
because I was working in Torrington.
Okay. Were you single still at the time?
No, wife just gotten married.
Okay. So you got out of the military.
Got out of the military, came back to school. Actually met my wife when I was in the military.
Okay.
In Virginia, and she moved back to Connecticut same time I did.
Was she from Connecticut?
No, she's actually from Chicago.
Oh, okay. So you were,
But I met her in Virginia, and so she was living across the street for a while, and then
right.
we decided that it was time to get married, so we got married and moved to Canton.
Good for you. Okay. So did you have kids shortly thereafter?
A couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, a few years.
And you have how many
I have
children?
2 children.
Do you know what are their names?
I have a daughter, Erica,
Okay.
who's I guess 34 at this time.
Okay.
And my son Todd,
Yep.
who's about 30. He'll be 31 this year.
Okay.
And as we always call him, he's the engineer extraordinaire.
Okay.
He works for Parker Hannifin and designs cooling pumps for Boeing 787s.
Oh, no kidding.
So he's kind of cool.
He picked up some of that from.
Yeah. And my daughter's married, and she has 3 children.
Okay.
So we have 3 grandchildren, and they're in Enfield.
Oh, good.
She's the bar manager for the Outback Steakhouse. And
Oh, it's a popular place.
yeah.
All right. So you moved. So you went from Canton to where?
Oh gosh, Canton back to Watertown to Delaware to New Jersey to Danbury to East Granby.
Okay. So what were you? We're at the point you traveled quite a bit. Are there any stories you want to share about your travels around the world? Anything that?
Well, I've been in 91 countries.
Okay.
Some of them for military, most of them for business.
Okay.
Primarily, I've been through Europe, Scandinavia, South America, Central America, Asia, and Asiana. And China. I've missed India, the Middle East, and Africa.
Okay.
And I guess at this point, I'm not really looking forward to going to the Middle East or
no, it's
Africa.
Not a big tourist spot right now.
Tourist spot right now. Travel has got two sides to it, right?
Yeah.
I missed a lot of my kids growing up. I can remember there were about 3 people in town that had jobs similar to mine.
Right.
2 other guys. We all, had kids the same age, and on a Friday night there'd be a high school concert, and all of our kids were in the band, and the airplanes would land at 5 o'clock, and all 3 of us would drag our suitcases off to the high school auditorium and show up just in time for the band concert, and then go home with the family.
Right.
So it was an interesting time to try to get through.
Yeah. So you've any interesting stories from around the world?
Well,
I mean, you probably have a lot. But is there anything that you find yourself repeating often when you're telling people?
Travel's a tool.
Yeah.
If you're in business, travel's a tool.
Right.
You don't do it as a tourist. I've seen some of the great things in the world.
Right.
But you have to keep in mind why you're there.
Right.
You're there to make money.
Right.
For your company. But I've been very lucky to see some of the real wonders of the world. I've seen the Parthenon in Athens, and I've seen the Gold Museum in Bogota, Colombia, and the terracotta soldiers in China.
Yep.
Just amazing sights. If we think, in the U.S. that we've got some wonderful monuments, be they the Lincoln Memorial or the Washington Monument. There are things around the world that challenge the emotion just as much.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. The few places I've traveled. Now, do you have? This is kind of a unique question. If you could suggest somebody go to see one place that you've been, what would that be?
I'll suggest 2.
Okay.
If you're a Vietnam vet, it's the Vietnam Memorial in Washington. I cannot go to that place without it meaning a lot to me.
Right.
But if you're just going as a tourist and you want to see something, probably the number one thing to see in the world, from my standpoint, is the terracotta soldiers in Xi'an, China.
Okay.
Just to think that these were made 2,500 years ago, and there were thousands of these life-size terracotta statues, every one with a unique face.
Oh, interesting.
And it's an army that was formed in order to protect the emperor on his death.
Right.
So when he went into the afterlife, it was his protection.
Oh, really?
And the funeral mounds and the activities go on for square miles. It's not just the little place; it's square miles.
It's kind of like the pyramids or something.
Oh, it is, but the pyramids are just sort of there. This is. They formed horses and chariots and whole encampments out of terracotta.
Oh, man.
And it's just an amazing sight.
Impressive, yeah. Just a side note on the Vietnam Memorial, all the memorials there, the war memorials.
Yep.
That was probably the most challenging description that I ever tried to, or explanation I ever tried to give, was to my 7-year-old son. Mm-hmm. He actually was 6 at the time. Walking through there and trying to explain the monuments.
Right.
It's a very difficult thing to do, and to do and not have it be real to him, and not. It's very emotional. Anyway, so as you came to your point where you moved to East Granby, I guess. What was your first impressions of East Granby when you first moved? What was your first experience? How did you come to find the town?
When we were moving up, I had been working in Danbury, living in Newtown, and then I took the job here in Bloomfield. When we wanted to relocate, got with a real estate agent, and the only instructions I gave was I wanted to be north of 84, west of 91, and I wanted a colonial. And I wanted it for under $100,000. That was the instructions given to the real estate agent. And there were two
Okay.
that met that criteria. One was in Granby.
Okay.
If you were to go out from the Stop and Shop and go across the street up by that school that's over there and you go around the corner, I don't know the name of the road anymore.
Yeah, right.
It's been 26 years.
Yeah, I always forget it's a school because it's set back a little bit.
Behind the school, there was a house there.
Okay.
And we looked at it.
Yeah.
And then there was the one on Spoonville Road. And we looked at both houses, and we liked the one on Spoonville better, so we put in an offer and bought that. We liked the school system being small.
Okay.
We knew that we weren't kind of a big into sports family, and if you're big into sports, East Granby's a bit of a tough place.
Challenging, yeah.
Except that my daughter was on the girls' soccer team.
Okay. What year was that?
That would have been
back in the 80s.
late 80s. Early 80s.
Early on, they had a really good.
They did. That was some of the time that they were doing very well.
Yeah.
So it's. But we when she graduated, there were 39 kids in the class, and when my son graduated, there was 41.
Wow.
So it's it was a good school system, and we also liked the idea that at the time there was no cafeteria. I don't think there is even today, but the mothers of the different clubs, like the AFS Student Club and the various clubs, would come in with pizza and sell pizza at lunch. So the mothers knew what was going on in school.
Oh yeah, it was kind of
the mother mafia.
Yeah, right. They ran a tight ship, huh?
Right.
All right. You had to. So you're found your colonial, and what was it about the town that impressed you that? When you first came here, was there any other unique characteristics to it?
The people were very friendly, and we're fairly active members of the church, Congregational Church there.
Okay.
The Stone Church.
Yep.
And the church was very, very welcoming.
Okay.
So that worked out very well for us. My wife does a lot of volunteering. She was a stay-at-home mom.
Okay.
When the kids were small.
Right.
But she does some volunteering, and she still does today.
Right.
And it was small town America. It was the best of small town America, as I remember it from the 50s and the 60s.
A little bit preserved from when you grew up.
Right.
Yeah.
And actually, it was funny because I mentioned earlier that I used to ski in New Hampshire at my aunt and uncle's house, go up there for vacations in the winter. And that was before '91. And I remember the town stone garage because we used to go up 187 and cut across back in the mid-50s.
Really?
And I remember the stone church, and I remember the maintenance garage.
Was it like across the street from there?
Well, it's where the current maintenance garage is.
Oh, okay, further down.
But it was that old stone building that was there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember that.
I remember that from when I was
really
sleeping in the back window going.
So that was your first impression of East Granby. It was.
It really was. It was from the mid '50s.
Right.
So because we used to go this way north and then hook on to Route 5 up in Springfield and go north.
Okay. So when you were when your kids went to school in town, obviously you had a pretty good experience. I mean, it was
it worked out very well for us.
Yeah.
I think you always hope for a good education for your kids. And I think they got a pretty good education.
One of the few things you can kind of have any control over in some ways, yeah.
Right.
When you came, when you first came to town, was there anything that was different? I guess the question would be, what's the biggest change you've seen from that first time you came into town till now?
Tough question.
Yeah.
I get the sense that there's more people. We used to know a lot more people.
Okay.
And of course, we're getting to the age where some of the people we know are no longer here.
Right.
And there's a lot of new people we don't know. But I still think it has that same small town flair. We went we were going to go to actually I was going to march in the parade on Monday.
Right.
And when it got canceled, we went down to the community center for a little while. Jim's there.
Yep.
It's a small town America, right? You're standing there talking to the current first selectman, Dave Kilbon was there, the previous first selectman,
right? And
just chatting, and you wouldn't do that in most big cities or most big towns. You wouldn't.
You're absolutely right.
You wouldn't have that kind of. He's a neighbor before he's a.
Yeah, it's accessibility.
Right.
And
I feel like. And I still like the idea of having the town meetings and the.
Yep.
Get the old curmudgeons of arguing.
Yeah, it can be very interesting. Yeah. But so the basically just the different population of the
Yeah,
town?
I think
once your kids get out of school, you kind of lose touch with a lot of the
you lose a little bit of that.
Yeah.
You start to know more about the library than the school system.
Exactly, right. And as some of those parents move away, you lose touch with that. So.
Right.
Okay, so is there anything that you would, in your experience, you've been all over the world, so is there anything about East Granby that you'd like to see change? Is there anything that you'd like to see different?
I'm not sure it's East Granby. I think it's more whether it's the state or the federal level. I think we have to do something as a nation to improve education.
Okay.
The education system scares the heck out of me.
So having traveled around the world, would you say that in comparison to the rest of the world, or just in an observation in this country?
I think we're losing the education race to the rest of the world.
Okay.
And I think it's a bad thing.
Right.
And it's not money. It's more process.
Right.
If you've seen the movie Waiting for Superman,
right.
It's a fascinating movie, and it just kind of highlights some of the issues.
Right.
But China's graduating more engineers than we're graduating people.
Right.
We've got more graduate engineers that are not American citizens than are American citizens.
Okay.
So I think and I think that goes all the way back to the high schools and the middle schools. We just need to focus more on our whole education. Our kids are the future, right?
Right. Yeah, you reap what you sow, right? Or at least what you cultivate.
Right.
Now, what you've obviously thought a bit about this. Is there anything in particular that you think it has changed or needs to change, or any observation regarding that you think would make things better?
I think we have to be less entitlement driven.
Okay.
We get so much of this. Well, he spent his 180 days. He gets to go to the next class instead of he spent that 180 days learning something to enable that person to move to the next class. So
you think the sense that we should earn more of what we are accomplished or given?
We're getting to the point where there's too much of an entitlement and not enough of good old Yankee got to go and do something in order to move ahead.
Well, yeah, I guess that covers a full spectrum of thinking. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just the school system, but the school system, the one that I think is the one that scares me, because that's the one about the future.
Right. So you'd make it more challenging or more demanding?
No, I just think people need to be held accountable.
So accountability.
Accountability.
So if you don't do it, you don't get credit for it.
Right.
Basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And I think that I think it's very visible in the outcomes of the school system. I think it's also visible in work or in social settings.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I happen to own a business and I employ people, and that's one of the challenges that I find is that I always feel like there's more of a can't-do attitude than a can-do attitude. Yeah. I don't remember that so much growing up.
I mean, and looking at it from a global standpoint or an international standpoint, I mean, you look at what happened in Japan on March 11th with the tsunami and the earthquake. There's a country that understood how to get things done. Maybe not perfectly, still have some issues, but they didn't argue about a lot of things. They just moved on and tried to resolve the problem as a cohesive government and people.
Right.
You didn't see looting, you didn't see rioting, you didn't see people whining about having to live in makeshift camps.
Right.
It was, let's get on with it and get this thing fixed.
Right.
And then you look at what happened with Katrina or some of the things that happened here, and I think what's happening in Joplin is very good. That community seems to have pulled together very well, but some of the others that have happened recently didn't pull together very well.
Didn't impress you.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you. Do you think? I often think back to in my experience anyway, that the time that I saw that happen was after 9/11. Where the country really did pull together, and you saw that. Do you think? How do you? I guess just thinking it through, how do you incorporate something like that into a national psyche, though, where you continue that? You know what I mean? Or what?
The first thing you have to do is. I'm not a student of politics.
Yeah, no. It's just like I said, it's a wide-ranging show.
But to me, it's the government the people that are in the government, I won't say the government, the people that we elect to go to Washington, to go to Hartford, to go to downtown East Granby, need to get the sense that they're there as public servants, which is what the original Constitution envisioned, instead of the vision that if I'm going to do anything, I have to get reelected, and therefore I need to focus on election first and service second. That's just my feeling. We've passed a lot of laws, and I guess the best one, I got into a discussion with my sister-in-law, who's a little more liberal than I am. And the discussion was around immigration and undocumented aliens. And she thinks we ought to just allow all that. And my point, or my question to her was, why would we pass a law that we didn't intend to enforce? And we seem to have a lot of laws that get passed to make people feel good, knowing they'll never get enforced. And it sort of brings about the whole entitlement activity. You know, you're a business owner. We've hired 80 union machinists since the first of the year in my business. That's a large number.
It sure is. It's a good number.
We've also hired numerous salaried people. We've been one of the largest hiring organizations in the state this year. But we had trouble hiring people because we were paying people $600 a week, basically, to come to work, and they can get $450 under the extended unemployment laws. Why would we give people 99 weeks to look for jobs if there's jobs available? So there's an entitlement there. So my fundamental problem with all of this is that I think we don't look at the laws of unintended consequences as well as we should.
It's just tough to have a craft a perfect scenario, but you always have to. It always has to evolve. If you see an issue, you got to change the law to reflect.
China's got a lot of problems. You know, they do some things really well. And they do some things really badly. I mean, I'll be watching CNN on TV in my hotel room, and if something comes on the Chinese government doesn't like, the television goes blank. It just goes blank. Obvious censorship. I was on the computer in my office, and all of a sudden the VPN cuts out because the government didn't like 2 of the words in an email.
Oh, interesting.
So they do that pretty blatantly. And you know, I guess I'd never get quite used to that level of censorship. But they do other things quite well. I think the legal system actually works pretty well.
Does it? It's fair.
No, but it's quick.
It's you know. Sometimes efficiency is kind of scary.
I know. But there's not a lot of argument about
it.
No. Some of the times you get into these legal battles and they go on for years and years and years, and you forget what you're arguing about.
It's a good point. It's got to be a balance there somewhere. So I think that, I guess you've had. That's a fascinating answer to the question of education, by the way. If you. Are there any characters that you remember from town that you encountered that you share with us, or everybody has 1 or 2 people that they remember, that the memory kind of sticks with them. Anybody that you met while you were in East Granby that you wanted to?
Al Biddleman, of course, from the church. He was just he is just a very interesting character.
Wasn't he the chairman of the Board of Ed for a while or something?
It might have been.
Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else.
It could have been. I always think we've been here since 1985. But I always considered us kind of new to the town.
Right.
Most of the people that we met when we were here had been here for 200 years instead of for 25 years.
There was an old core population.
So I mean, I think that he's probably the one that comes to mind. He's Tex Guinan, only because we know him from church. And I guess most of the ones we met were basically because of church. Charlie Cahill was, I think, first selectman when we moved in. Or maybe it was It wasn't Charlie Cale. That's who we bought our house from.
Rothammer, I mean.
Rothammer was
Yeah,
here.
he seemed to.
Yeah, Rothammer was here. He was kind of a nice guy.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so this is kind of a different spin on it. And what's the best change about the town? What's the best thing that you've seen?
I think that the open spaces that they've developed, that it was a stroke of genius to buy the farms.
East Granby Farms.
East Granby Farms.
Yeah.
Absolutely perfect. I mean, to think that a small town government would have that much foresight
Yeah.
is really amazing.
Yeah,
It's
that's a
just
treasure.
wonderful.
Yeah.
It really is wonderful.
That's something that could have slipped away very easily.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, we had Dave Kilbon on last week, and
Right.
we talked to him about it. He was the first selectman who kind of initiated that. And
Yeah, Dave
sought it out.
Kind of. I like Dave a lot.
Yeah.
So I think he did a very good job for the town.
That's great. Okay, so and this is another spin on a question I asked before. If you had a magic wand, okay, cost not being an issue or anything like that, what would be the one thing you would do for the town? Is there anything that
I'd be back to improving the school system.
just improve the schools? Okay.
Yeah. Both physically, although I'm not a big believer in physical
Solutions.
facilities. I think it's much more to do with the teachers and the policies.
So you'd
Even more
revamp
than-
it.
Yeah, even more than the teachers, it's more the policies and what they teach and how they teach.
Right.
I think the U.S. teaches better than the rest of the world when they really want to.
Right.
We teach people how to think. The rest of the world tends to teach people rote.
Yeah, right.
So I think that the U.S. philosophy of teaching is very good. And I'm not an expert in education.
Yeah, no,
But-
that's why it's
but,
but you've obviously been around enough and formed some pretty strong opinions on it.
But I think it'd be really, get the education right.
Okay. So when you were, just to touch on that once again, because it seems to be a very passionate subject for you, if you, do you think there's a resistance? Because I've often thought that if you like you're talking about these education systems around the world that seem to be producing more consistent quality students. Do you think there's a resistance in this country, though, to accept that somebody might do it a little better? I mean, I often thought, well, if the Europeans or the Asians or whoever are getting a better result, why aren't we copying some of what we do? I think there's it always seems to me there's a resistance to admit that somebody else is doing it better, oftentimes.
I think it's deeper than that. Two different issues.
Yeah.
One of my children had a teacher who, when we asked why the certain things are going on in the classroom that seem to be not well managed.
Okay.
It was sort of well, what can I do?
Right.
If I send him the office, nothing happens. If I touch him, I'm in jail.
Right.
So I think we've gotten to a position where I think some of the teachers are scared of the kids because they're scared of the legal consequences, which are the unintended consequences of some of the laws that have been passed.
It kind of gets back to your entitlement thing.
Right.
Yeah.
But it also gets back to who in Hartford is not going to pass a law about taking care of children.
Right.
Taking care of children is huge.
Right.
It's very important.
Right.
But so they pass a law, and all that does is allows people that may have a different view to handcuff the teachers who are trying to teach.
Right.
Because they're afraid to do anything because it comes back to, you touched my son or my daughter. Or, you're going to jail or you're going to lose your license.
Right.
And I think that a lot of the teachers have been handcuffed in being able to properly discipline, and discipline's a big thing for teenagers.
Oh, it's the whole thing in some ways,
So I think that some of the issues on education have much more to do with some of the laws on how we allow the teachers to teach.
Okay, so you think we've structured the system in a way that doesn't allow the flexibility necessary?
I think it's a system issue.
Yeah. So, it usually is, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Trust me, I went to basic training and they didn't have any of those same laws.
None of those, they didn't have those issues, did they?
No.
If you survived, you passed, something like that. Yeah. Anyway, so is there anything else about East Granby that you'd like to share? I mean, is it?
I think it's a wonderful town.
Yeah.
I mean, we have people moving in. We're hiring, and when they're talking about moving from the Midwest or the South, coming into work, where should you look? I always tell them that they ought to they ought to look at East Granby, because if you don't have kids that are into big time sports, it's just a wonderful town to be involved with. It's small enough so that everybody's knows somebody. Okay. And it's big enough so that you can get lost if you want to.
Okay, so you, when you talk to these people, is there any one, other than East Granby Farms, which you obviously are fond of, is there any other things about the town that you tell people about? What would you, if you were describing it, what would it?
The Memorial Day Parade.
Okay.
I always tell them that, there's 4,000 people, and I think I'm wrong there, but there's 4,000 people in town.
Five, and close enough.
Half march and half watch, and you can decide that morning which one to be.
Yeah, exactly, right. When you have kids, you could be in 6 different groups if you want.
Right, so it's just a very good little town where, I think the school system is pretty good.
Right.
If you're looking for, religious organizations, I think we have several that are very good. We have the tax base from the airport, so that helps us a bit.
Helps, yeah.
And we have good shopping that's fairly close between Simsbury and Granby, and we don't really need to have all of that traffic from shopping.
We don't need the congestion. We can travel to.
So it's
fairly close.
Just kind of a neat little New England town.
Yeah. It's been a fascinating conversation. I usually try to close with a very kind of a general question, which is and we probably touched on a lot of this already, but if you were giving advice to children, your grandchildren, whoever growing up today, and you could summarize or crystallize your advice into a couple sentences, what would that be?
Don't accept boundaries.
Okay. It's not very. That's pretty liberal.
I know. I'm kidding. I'm a conservative.
No, I'm just kidding.
But no, there's a whole world out there.
Okay.
And you're not limited by what you see locally.
Right.
But you're competing globally.
Okay.
So make sure that when you're looking at where you want to go, you don't just say that I've got to do better than Johnny. I've got to do better than Young Joe. Right. Or I've got to do better than Manfred Bohm.
Okay.
Whoever. Because there's a whole world out there, and it's an interesting place, a very, very interesting place, but it's full of people that want your job.
Okay, that's good advice. Yeah. Don't accept the limitations of your local flavor.
I love having a good job here, and living in a small town.
Right.
It's best of all worlds, but make sure that you don't lose sight of the fact that there are people all over the world that are just as fascinating. I've got friends all over the world,
right?
And we stay in touch, and they all have their viewpoints, and it's helped me, bring sort of a roundness to my viewpoints.
Right. So look outside your neighborhood and find the challenges that
if you're in East Granby, look in Connecticut or Hartford County in Connecticut, or the U.S. U.S. is a wonderful country. It's built on a dream. Read the Constitution. Read the Declaration of Independence. Okay. Fascinating documents.
Yeah. That's great advice. I mean, it's kind of, especially coming from somebody who's traveled through much of the world, to come back to that crystallization of what you think is important. Well, I appreciate you coming and joining us tonight. It was fairly short notice today, but you made yourself available, and it's been fascinating. And it always amazes me where we end up in some of these discussions, because that's why we try to keep it loose. But I'd like to thank our audience for joining us tonight. And once again, this is Reflections on East Granby. It's an ongoing series on GCTV, Channel 16. You can view it online on www.gctv16.org. And Copies of these tapes are available. It's one of the few ways that the station raises money, so you can buy those through the website. Once again, we thank you for joining us here tonight. Reflections on East Granby. Good night.